Today, I'm going to be talking about music, and not just the music of today, but the music of the past and the music of the future as well. So let me begin all the way back before the age of Spotify and Apple Music, and even recording in general. Let me start by talking about the first known musical instrument, the Neanderthal flute. This flute was a primitive flute made out of bear bone, found in a cave in Slovenia. This flute dates back at least 50,000 years ago and was found in 1995. This discovery wasn't just great for archaeologists, it was also great for scientists studying human development and evolution. So before I dive in any further, here's what the Neanderthal flute actually would have sounded like. So, this flute may not have the most refined sound or the most complex structure, but it actually holds up surprisingly well playing modern songs. It's pretty crazy how primitive humans, Neanderthals, were able to create an instrument out of bones, and then make it play something. I mean, I'm not sure what they played back then, but I mean, I'm sure they played pretty complex music, considering it did have holes on it for like different notes. So that's pretty cool. So all this information is great, but it doesn't answer the question of why these ancient humans were playing this instrument. As we all know, Neanderthals were hunter-gatherers. They weren't very civilized in the sense of they had a lot of free time. They spent most of their day hunting and then most of their night sleeping. So there really wasn't too much time, it seems, that they would have to play music or listen to music or anything like that. So why were they playing it? The research on this is pretty scarce, but from what I can find, it was most likely for the same reason we use music today, just to listen. The holes in the flute are strategically placed to have the diatonic scale, which is the most common scale in the world, and it's what we use today to play an extremely large amount of songs. Yeah, they listen to it just because they enjoy the music, but there is another hypothesis. It's a lot more practical, and that purpose being to possibly notify other people in the tribe or pack of danger, food, water, or something of that nature. Sort of how the conch shell is used in the Caribbean. So this flute may be the oldest instrument ever found, but it is by no means thought to be the earliest form of music. The earliest form of music is hypothesized amongst many scientists to likely be percussion-based, such as basic patterns made with sticks, rocks, and other readily available materials. Some people even say that the use of cow hides and just animal hides in general was probably used around the same time this flute was made, if not earlier. So the music that these ancient humans seem to play was used for enjoyment, but why did they enjoy it? Well, most likely because music has been known to release a chemical in our brains called dopamine. And this chemical is released whenever something our brain needs occurs. A lot of drugs can also stimulate dopamine usage to alleviate pain and stuff like that. So although music isn't necessarily as important to human survival as intercourse and food, it still definitely plays a pretty large role in providing happiness and, I'm assuming, other benefits to these ancient people. Those benefits obviously are unknown at the moment, but I'm sure through more research we can definitely find some evidence to kind of give us more information about really why these ancient people were playing and listening to music. So later on in human history, the first known song, or I guess the first known melody, was just found a while ago. It's been preserved through many years. It's called Hurrian Hymn Number 6. It's an ancient Egyptian song, and I'll play a clip of that right now. So in this song, we hear a lot of different patterns being played, a lot of different sort of rushing notes, almost like a waterfall of notes, you could say. And we hear a lot of harmonies as well. Seems as though there's multiple instruments playing. So I guess I'd like to talk about why humans seem to enjoy harmonies and notes playing at the same time. So music in itself, as I said earlier, releases dopamine, but it's not necessarily just one note can release dopamine. It's most of the time multiple notes colliding and the wavelengths actually stimulating parts of your ear that lead straight to your brain. I don't want to say forcing it, but sort of prompting it to start releasing dopamine because of the harmonies that you can hear. So I'm assuming a lot of the time back then when these songs were played, the harmonies were first found, and I'm gonna say it's probably like a high almost. Once the harmonies were played, the ancient people probably got a rush of dopamine. They probably got goosebumps. That's a very common thing that people get. I know I experience goosebumps every once in a while when I hear like a nice harmony or a nice song. There's just a lot of different ways that music can affect your mental health, and I'm going to assume that that's the reason it was first used. Now, that's probably the reason it was used back then, but that's also a really big reason why music is made today. It's not only a form of expression, it's also being used in therapy. There's a lot of different music therapies going around where you'll play different frequencies that sort of stimulate different parts of the ear, again, releasing dopamine and other chemicals that can sort of make you forget your problems and just spark a lot of positive emotions in your brain when you might be having a rough time or something like that mentally. This whole concept of harmonies and notes being played at the same time kind of dives into music theory, and also kind of goes into the diatonic scale that I touched on earlier, where the holes in the flute actually were the diatonic scale. So there's a whole science behind why music sounds good, why some wavelengths will flow together better. Waves that sound produce are like waves. They're, up and down and up and down and up and down. And when different wavelengths of sound match up, they enter our ear at the same time, and it's a lot cleaner and smoother, and the waves don't sort of clash, as can happen when you play two notes that don't line up. So there's a lot of science that goes behind chords and how sounds can enter your ear and actually sound good compared to how sounds can enter your ear and actually sound bad. I want to play a quick clip of myself actually playing some harmonies with a friend of mine in orchestra. Now, music can release a lot of positive feelings and chemicals in your brain, but it can also release a lot of negative ones. Music has been commonly used in torture, actually. The use of insanely repetitive or annoying, clashing, terrible notes, things like that. Just the use of, bad music can be used to extract information. It can almost drive people insane in some instances. Music not only can be scientifically bad due to the wavelengths clashing and things like that, but they can also be bad due to the connotations that we put on them. A common example of this is All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey. It's a song that's insanely popular around Christmas time, and in some, it produces almost a guttural reaction when it's played. It's almost like hearing an alarm or something of that nature. It sort of turns something on in your brain. For a lot of people, it's anger. For others, it's excitement for Christmas. And I guess that probably has to do with the repetitiveness, considering its rise to popularity every year, year after year for, I'm not sure how many years, but it's been a really long time that that song's been top 100 around December, January, and those months. So there's a lot of different ways that we can sort of attach our own personal feelings and connotations to music. Another example of this is breakups and traumatic experiences. Let's say you're in a car and a song's playing and you get into a car crash and someone passes. That's a very traumatic experience, and some people can have songs be triggered or be triggers for a terrible experience that can trigger PTSD. Like, if you were to hear the song when you're out in public, you can kind of have a flashback to the car crash and things like that. The chemical composition in your brain literally changes with music, whether that be sadness, anger, happiness, or a really wide range of emotions. It really is crazy how much your brain is sort of manipulated by music and music theory and things of that nature. Now I'm going to touch on where music is going to go in the future. As we know, there's a pretty limited amount of chords and notes that the human ear can pick up, and there's a pretty limited amount of chords and notes that the human ear actually enjoys listening to. So that kind of brings up the question of, will we run out of music? Will we run out of original rhythms and melodies and things of that nature? Will we have to resort to just playing the same melodies at different tempos? Will we have to resort to only relying on words and changing the lyrics of songs? It's hard to tell. It's hard to know. Obviously, our brain can maybe adapt and become more, I guess, susceptible to accepting other forms of music, such as like slower songs with not a lot of chords. Maybe even the composition of our ears can evolve to allow loud and annoying noises and things that we would hate listening to now to actually be enjoyable, allowing for a whole new branch of music to form from notes that seemingly would not be played in any sort of music today, except for music that's specifically made to have negative connotations to it. So, definitely the question arises when it comes to that sort of thing. So yeah, music started out relatively primitive, and through a lot of time and a lot of innovation and a lot of changes, we've really sort of refined music as a species. We've come to use it for a lot of different things, whether negative or positive. And I'm excited to see where music and the use of music in science and different fields can actually go. So that's about it. Thank you for listening.